what I want to ask is that this is learning, and as a leader, learning never stops. So, how have you continued to invest in your own learning and grow into or learn all of these tactical communication skills as well as other skills, especially with the given the amount of change that we have to deal with, especially just the last 3 years? It feels like a very different world. So, how have you invested in yourself and continued to grow and evolve?
Yeah, great question. Mentors and executive coaches, that's been a huge benefit to me and my teams over time. It's one of the reasons that I spend time to do that for others right now and being very intentional on it. I've always had teams that work in other cities, other countries, and other continents. Time zones, cultures hasn't been an issue for me, but things shifted so much with COVID and going to that. And so the full remote, I don't know that for some reason there was a difference for me anyways in when I had teams that worked for me in Singapore, in South Korea, and in Paris versus everybody's remote. I don't know why, but there was something knowing that people were walking to an office that was different versus everybody being at home. And so I had to end up really taking some time and talk with other leaders that have worked with remote teams and go, let's walk through what worked well in a remote team when we had offices and how that adjusts to when you're working out of your house. Because it is very different. When there's 20 people in an office in Veldhoven, Netherlands, I'm talking to different people and you are all interacting. And so I learn a little bit about what's going on with you when I'm talking to Keith on the team. And so when we're all remote, we don't have some of that same personal interaction. And so I've had to really put in place some systems to be much more intentional. But by doing that, wow, the productivity has gone way higher.
Mm. Can you share a few of those systems which are required, especially in the remote setting?
Yeah. So I'm much more intentional with one-on-ones now than I ever was before. Using tools like Lattice, 15.5, Culture Amp that help enforce that. And while they might come from the HR team, it's the executives and the managers that make those things live or die. And so that helps who on your teams are having these one-on-ones or not. One-on-ones are so important, especially then coaching people how to have conversation. I was always really good at having one-on-one conversation, but I traveled to my teams in other countries so we could have this time together. When it became just remote, fully remote, I had to be
Mm,
much more intentional using some of those tools to come up with the topics that I want to make sure we cover on our one-on-one, because that's
mm,
different than let's go to lunch or something. On the other side, I actually do things so I nominate somebody that's not on the people team, so not an HR, because culture needs to come from the organization and people team shouldn't drive culture. Too many companies that they do, but the culture comes from the people that are doing, and
yeah.
HR are helpers to me. They're not the people building the product, selling the product. And so I have somebody like in my last company, I had my product marketing manager that every other week he led a 1 hour virtual social hour for the teams.
Mm,
And so depending on the size of the team, sometimes you break that up into multiple teams. And then every like 3 to 4 of those, we would do something special. I had a magician come in and, and do it's like, this kind of have fun. We had a virtual petting zoo. And then, oh, I had somebody that came in. You have to, and you, it takes time for somebody to go out and find these. Somebody that came in and over an hour and a half, they did very basic level sign language introduction for us. We all learned together. It was a fun environment. This is what the person does for exposing American Sign Language to people. So many people asked us to do that again. When you spend that time that when you're in an office that just naturally happens, hey, let's go to lunch together.
mm.
You have to still find time to do that as a remote team. And almost nobody does it. But when you do it, it
Yeah,
unlocks growth.
absolutely. I think it's too easy to get caught up in that. Like we are remote, so let's get transactional and let's get working. And we miss out on these things which we normally don't consider work. And by being deliberate about it, even in things like having fun, how much it unlocks, right? Because if there was ever a need for like soft skills or human to human skills, they are even more required when we are not face to face, right? Rather than earlier.
Yeah, it makes things so much easier.